Hey guys, how's it going? I'm here with the Noble brand today, and beside me, I have the founder of the Noble brand, who is Sydney Noble.
Hello.
How are you today? How's it going?
I'm good. Still trying to wake up.
You know, early days, early mornings. So we are out here in the wonderful downtown LA. So you did a market show out here?
Yeah, I did Markets for Makers this past weekend. It's my first time doing Markets for Makers. It was at the California Market Center downtown, and it was a great turnout. We sold out of a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
You were there.
Nice.
It was fun.
I was. I wasn't there for the first day, but the second day was a blast.
Yeah, it was fun. I love my LA community. They come, they support, they show out. It's a really big small business support culture out here, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I remember you kind of mentioning that to me, and I feel like I immediately saw that as soon as I walked in. And then furthermore, when the customers started coming in, they were ready to shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were ready to shop. They knew what they were coming for. They knew what they were looking for. Mm-hmm. They knew what they wanted. And I think the one thing I appreciated the most was their expressions to your candles. It wasn't fake.
Yeah.
They were all just like, oh my God. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you some questions, of course, about your company and all that. But first, we want to start with you.
Okay.
So I want to get to know you. Let's get the people, I'm sure they're interested and they got some questions. You have such a beautiful story. Your journey is outstanding.
Thank you.
As far as my concern, if you ask me, you have become like the definition of resilience in my book. So, of course, let's just start with where you're from.
I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. Lived in LA for 10 years, so I claim this as second home, always and forever. But now I'm back in Michigan.
Nice. So what is your come-up story in Detroit? Tell us about it.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I started off being a dancer, started dancing when I was 5, and pursued that all the way into adulthood until I got sick. And then I really just started focusing on this business, and this business has been pushing me through and keeping me fueled and going, for sure. But I'll always be a dancer at heart.
Yes, I love that. That I feel like that's a fact from what I know anyway.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you got into like painting too, photography. Tell me some more about that.
Painting was always just like a little side passion hobby. Photography, went to college for photography. It was one of those things where my mom was like, if you're gonna move to LA, you gotta stay in school.
Yes.
She's like, I don't care what you go to school for. You can go to school for basket weaving for all I care. Just gotta go to school for something.
Right.
Get your degree in something. And so just me always being a creative, always being somebody who likes to come up with creative concepts and paint pictures figuratively and literally.
Right.
I just like to create and bring things that I see in my mind to life. So I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Photography. And also being raised in a business family, I knew I could turn photography into a hustle while I was out here. Being in the entertainment industry, everybody needs headshots all the time. Like you have to update your headshots every couple years.
Oh,
so,
didn't know that.
Yeah, anytime your hair changes, anytime any like major new look,
noted,
you need to update your headshots. So people always need pictures.
Okay.
And so that's how I made my little side money outside of my regular 9 to 5.
Right. That's nice. So what was your 9 to 5? What job was that?
Oh my goodness, I had a few. I worked at Forever 21, hated it.
Yeah.
After that, I did Lyft before Lyft was like really popular.
Okay.
I did Instacart for a long time before Instacart was really popular when they first came out.
Right.
And then I worked at this pizza place called Mod Pizza. Shout out to Mod Pizza.
They're delicious.
They're a great company to work for.
So good.
They're a great company to work for. They have a really good work culture. They really respect their employees. So I'll always be grateful to Mod, and they give you opportunities to move up. So when I first started, I just started off as a regular team member. Within like the first month I was promoted to like a shift lead, and then like a couple months after that I was promoted to a trainer who like helps you can travel and like help open up new locations and stuff like that. So that's what took me back to Detroit for a little bit. I moved back to Detroit for 8 years to open up 5 locations in Detroit. Then I came back to LA, pursued. That's when I started building my business. I started building the Noble brand. So
that's crazy. So I never knew that. That fills in a lot of little gaps for me, you know. So what was it like when you initially decided, all right, I'm gonna move to LA? Like what was it like making that move completely by yourself initially? Because I'm sure in the beginning, you know, we're not psychic. We didn't know exactly what jobs we might. So what was that like? Did you have any fear or concerns or like a plan B? Or was it just, nope, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna happen?
I really didn't have a plan B. My mom really raised me to think things through and be very logical and very realistic.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah. So, as a kid, for example, if I wanted something, first I had to prove why I deserve it. So, like, whether that be like keep good grades, or are you doing your chores, or, you know, are you keeping up your side of the bargain? As, you know, the responsibilities of whatever a child has. So that was step 1. Then step 2 was you need to do the research about whatever it is you want so you can understand the value of it. So whether I used to collect Barbies, like those really like Bob Mackie, like hand beaded, like the ones that cost like hundreds of dollars. I still have them. They're in storage. But you know, I had to do the research. So, like, I needed to be able to come to her with a plan of, like, this is where you buy it. Even though I wasn't paying for it, I had to be like, this is where you buy it. This is how much it costs. This is what it is. Like, I had to do all that research. So, for me, whenever, as an adult, it was very much so, okay, I want to move to LA. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to see it through. This is how I'm going to make it work. And it was very much so she kept me realistic and not so, like, flighty and in a dream world about things. Like, she never like diminished my dreams, but she was like, okay, let's logistically think through this to how it's going to actually happen. You know, so how can we tackle these goals and make them come to fruition? So my plan A's always kind of manifested themselves because I had a plan and a work ethic behind them, you know. I thought things through on the front end versus like I'm just going to jump head in and figure it out. You know, so. And
that's very important. I think maybe that, I mean, honestly, it seems like that's exactly what built you to have the mentality you have. So shout out to Noble. Hey, Mama back there. So through all that, you know, what inspired you to, because I know we talked about Mom's Pizza, and then you went to photography school, and then you started painting. So through all of that and the growing and finding your space here in LA, what is it that inspired you to officially create the Noble brand and then launch it? What was that founding moment?
It was really about, for me, passing on the wisdom and the tidbits that I was raised with, I was brought up with. So I consider the 4 women that really raised me like my pillars. So that's my great-grandma, my paternal great-grandma, both grandmothers, and my mom. My mom was a single mom, but my dad wasn't in my life. But it was really the women. Like, the women were like the strong matriarchal leaders of the family. Like,
I love to hear that.
The men were there and they had their role, but the women were like the ones that were like the nurturers. The men provided financially, the women raised the kids, if that makes sense. So they just taught me a lot about ethics, morals, values. They taught me a lot about my history, my past, what it means to be a woman in America, what it means to be a Black woman in America, what that really looks like, what it will look like in the future as I grew up, the value of self and like, you know, knowing what you're worth and knowing your boundaries and knowing all these things. Like, they taught me all of that, and they taught me through words, but then they also taught me through actions.
Yes, that's
so
important.
As I became an adult, you know, you kind of learn from looking, and you learn from, you know, what people tell you, but then you also learn through lived experience. So once I became an adult, I just started peeping things
you start to notice things the older you get, like,
for like first-hand perspective. And so going through things, especially like when I started dating, you know, at first you're very like blinded into like the rose-colored glasses of it all, and you know, the fun times the fun times of it all, and you can lose yourself, you know, until you really learn who you are on a first-hand basis. And so going through that as a very young adult, like straight out of college, moving to a completely
that's a big deal. And I think a lot of girls need to hear this too.
Moving to a completely new city across the country, where everybody is focused on their own dream and kind of self-centered, but not in a bad way. Like everybody is just striving for their own goals. It's easy to lose track of the consideration and the mindfulness of the people around you because everybody's so focused on their own dream.
And it seems like people come here for that.
So I had to reevaluate and redefine my boundaries and all those things. And so when I started doing my own self-work, I was able to appreciate other people and understand other people's value on a whole nother level. And so that was pretty much, I know this is a long answer to a short question.
No, it's a big question. It's a big question.
So that was pretty much the basis of the Noble brand. Standing in your light, standing in your power, understanding that you are royal, understanding that you have value, and living in that unapologetically. And, you know, once you do that, once you fill up your own cup, you are able to pour into others.
Yes, that is very true. So then I can kind of assume, I know after you started the Noble brand, you started to, now, from my perspective and maybe other customers, it may have just been candles, but like really good looking and smelling candles. But then it slowly started to develop into this self-investment, self-love, self-appreciation, self-involvement kind of thing. And it seems like you began to create a whole space for that. And it all started with these candles because now you have other things you're doing too, right?
Well, actually, it started off as a clothing line. And a lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
So back in the day...
We're getting somewhere. We're digging.
Back in the day, I sold T-shirts, and my very first line was just very basic and simple, a black and white run of T-shirts with the logo and the crown. And the crown is very symbolic because each point on the crown symbolizes my pillars, me, and then the diamond in the middle is God as the center of it all.
Whoa.
So my logo is very intentional. It's not
a bomb
just...
drop noise after that. I did not know that. Wow.
So it has 4 points. I'm the center point, and then God's the center diamond in the middle of it all. So that was the very first T-shirt drop. And then the message, everybody's like, you know, when people in business, they're always like, who's your target audience? You can't always talk to everybody.
True.
And for me, my target audience is specifically the females that are from cultural backgrounds of people of color. So Asians, Latinos, Black people, like
the list goes
Indian, like any type of person of color, because for us, we're not really raised, well, this new generation is really prioritizing it, but being a millennial, we weren't really raised with self-care needs to be a priority.
Very true.
We didn't see that. Yeah. It was, you have to work twice as hard to get half the way there of your white female counterparts, and we're not even talking about the white male counterparts.
Right.
Like, you have to work twice as hard just to meet the same level as your white female counterparts. And you're still, we're not even going to get into the pay gap. But anyway, all that to say, my female people of color was a target audience. And so my second line of T-shirts, I created a melanin collection. And I had all different shades of browns and tans and nudes. That was my second line of shirts. And then after that, I released like a little limited edition drop of candles to match the melanin collection. The candles took off. And to me, that was like God's way of being like, this is actually where your business needs to go.
The little shine of light.
And so I took a pause, and a year later, I completely revamped. I dropped the clothes, and I was like, we are a candle company. And it made sense because in my own self-care practice, I always used candles before I started my candle company.
Nice.
So I was like, this is actually how I self-care, and I understand the importance of it, and adding aromatherapy, you know, it creates safe spaces. It adds an extra layer to your sensory experience and all the things.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is a good way to promote that element of the business.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So and this is why we have to ask these kind of questions. We have to have these moments. We have to interview you because this isn't something new for the viewers. From my knowledge, you know, we're asking these questions, but just to put it in perspective of a time frame, if you may, from, you know, the beginning, leaving Detroit, coming here to dance, going to school for that, and then the journey. What's like a little short, if you may, like a brief understanding of this time frame from when you left Detroit to when you knew, okay, the Noble brand is going to be a candle company?
Yeah, okay. I left Detroit. Well, I graduated high school in 2011. I initially left Detroit and moved to Chicago for a year, for the first year of college. I went to school to be a dance major, realized I don't necessarily need a degree to pursue this as a career, unless I wanted to go into like a teaching field at like a university or something, which I didn't want to do. So I was like, you know what, let's just take the plunge and move and just pursue this for real. So that following year, 2012, moved out here to LA to really chase that dream. At the same time, I was in school at Art Institute for photography, just to appease my mom.
Right.
And then I moved back home with Mod at the same time. My mom called me a little Jamaican. I always had, and not in a derogatory way, but I always had a lot of hustles. But you really have to out here in LA because LA is so expensive. Like one job is not enough.
No.
So I was in school. I was auditioning a lot. I had my job at Forever 21 that lasted for about a year, hated it. And I left.
Me too.
Started working at Mod, and then I moved back to Detroit for 8 months. And it was when I came back to LA, I was like, this is what I want to do. Because when I moved back to Detroit, as much as I love the people there, it reminded me of why I left.
Understood.
Just being such a like free-flowing creative.
Yes.
And somebody who's very focused on self-growth at the time, that wasn't popularized. So, and I wasn't in the best of circles at the time.
Yeah, we had a little small community of that in Detroit, for sure.
Yeah.
But it was just amongst us.
Exactly.
And we created that for ourselves. I feel like.
And so that was like the catalyst of me being like, Sydney, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So when I moved back to LA, it was like, okay, time to do some reflection and some healing and all the things. And I was like, okay, now that I've done that, I'm back in LA. let's build a business around it.
Right.
Because I didn't want to go back to a 9-to-5.
And that was what was the stamp here?
That was
the foundation of the Noble brand.
2016.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's 2024 now.
2024.
That's crazy.
So for the first 2 years, from 2016 to actually first 3 years, first 2 years, it was clothing line. Took a year off. 2019 is when I established it as a home fragrance company.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was that long ago.
Yeah. So it was in February, it'll be 6 years.
So needless to say, this has completely taken off. I mean, I've seen a little bit. I've been to some of your markets and some of your little vendor days. So from my perspective, it's like, I know the people love it. I love it. I volunteered myself almost as an employee to you. It was
Absolutely.
like, listen, if you need me to brag about your product, I work in marketing also, and I'm real good at it. Let me know.
Yes, you are.
But needless to say, your business is taking off, but what does that look like for you? What is, it's one thing to have people tell you like, oh my God, I love your stuff, but how do you feel that people feel about it? How do you feel now after seeing all this growth, all this attention come to your brand?
Yeah.
How do you feel about it now?
I feel like the product speaks for itself.
That's exactly what I always say to the customers.
I feel like the product speaks for itself. It's just a matter of getting the product in front of people.
Yes.
And the product does its own legwork. When it comes to the quality, when it comes to the fragrance blends, when it comes to the packaging, all the things. And I'm such a type A personality and overachiever that I'm not even in my final form of the business, if you will.
Exactly, right.
But also being that analytical person that my mom raised me to be, it's like you also have to make decisions strategically and smartly. So, I'm doing things as budget allows. As the business grows, I'll elevate more. And that's a message that I actually want to give out to all my other fellow entrepreneurs.
Listen up.
Don't think that it has to be perfect the first time.
Bingo. That's
very
important.
You have room to grow into what you want your final vision to be. Like my first set of candles, they weren't hideous, but they were nowhere near the way they look now.
And I haven't even seen that. Let's throw a little corner photo down here at the bottom if you can. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was still figuring it out. So now, years in, I know what the vision is. Everything's starting to align and be cohesive. And yeah.